that is what is given to a last maker, and then he will start from that point.
Yeah.
And he'll make one last, and then it'll come back to the workshop to have the other lasts fellowed on the machine. Just smoothing it out so it's got a nice surface. You're wearing a suit, as you're wearing, the classic style of shoe to wear with that for business on an everyday basis is the Oxford with a cap. A bit of extra strength on the cap, not only for the sort of, to take a bit of knocking about, but also you can get a very nice high shine on that. Yeah. The closer will be given the lasts. They will make the paper patterns. They're tailoring the patterns they have to the particular last. So those patterns will then be given to the clicker, and the clicker is the person who looks after the leather and cuts out the leather. The clicker will then bundle the leather for the shoe together, and they'll give it back to the closer, who will then essentially close those pieces together and again do the punching on the toes and do all the work.
There we go. So this is the bundle.
Hi, I'm Kirby Allison, back here in London, truly one of my favorite cities, and one which I've increasingly begun to consider almost as a second home. London is a city that is, of course, steeped in history. Behind me on St. James's Street, for example, is St. James's Palace, built by order of King Henry VIII almost 500 years ago in 1530, and still to this day used as an important royal residence. Also located on this historic street are many of the heritage firms, now British institutions, that have been faithfully serving the British royal family for centuries. Today is a very exciting day for me, one that years ago, this kid from the Lone Star State of Texas would perhaps never have imagined possible. I have come for the fitting of my very own pair of bespoke shoes from the most prestigious bespoke shoemaking firm in the world, John Lobb. John Lobb has, over the years, served countless sovereigns, dating back to their first royal warrant, awarded by the then Prince of Wales, later to become King Edward VII, in 1863. Since that year, the company, which is still run by Lobb family members, has held every reigning sovereign's royal warrant, with the single exception of King George VI. And indeed, this year, they have received the honor of having been bestowed one of the first royal warrants of His Majesty King Charles III's reign. To own a pair of bespoke shoes from John Lobb, the original John Lobb, whose only location is here on St. James's Street, is truly to have arrived, to have participated, even just to a small degree, in the incredible living story of one of the greatest bastions of craft ever to have existed. We're delighted to be sharing this journey with you, having documented the entire process, from the taking of the bespoke measurements, to the last making, to the upper making, and to the making of the shoes themselves. And now is the moment when I can relish this amazing privilege of trying on these bespoke creations for the very first time. So please do join me as we step inside John Lobb for the bespoke fitting of what I know will be an absolutely spectacular example of quality, craftsmanship, and tradition.
Jonathan.
Kirby, lovely to see you again.
Thank you so much. It's a pleasure to be back in London, and of course to be here at John Lobb. So I guess first order of business is congratulations. I just read the announcement that Lobb has received the royal warrant from King Charles III. So that must be really exciting. I mean, what an honor.
Yeah, well, we're all very pleased. It's obviously we've had the warrant for the Prince of Wales for many years, but to actually be able to continue that and maintain it as serve the king as well as the prince, it's a wonderful thing.
I guess at the end of the day, and most profoundly a testament to not only this firm's legacy of excellence in craft, but also excellence in service. And I think that that's something we've seen through this process. And that degree of service is something that's experienced by all customers.
Well, it doesn't end with the actual making and delivery of the shoes. I mean, the shoe is worn, it needs to be serviced, and that service can go on for generations.
Just thrilled to receive the email that these shoes are ready for their fitting. And I've been looking forward to today with much anticipation of having the privilege to finally slip on my first pair of proper handmade John Lobb bespoke shoes.
Well, I'm looking forward to it. Let's go.
Thank you. Well,
Morning,
exciting.
Kirby. Exciting.
Yes.
So here we have the completed shoes. The uppers are made, the soles have been stitched on. So this is how we would present the shoes, and we want to get the true fitting experience.
Yeah. And so this is the point at which the shoes have been made, and it's exactly that. It's a fitting where the shoes are tried on for the first time, and I guess as a last maker, you're really assessing fit.
This is the proper way of fitting a shoe. We present the shoe in a completed state. Obviously, we've made the lasts, we've made the uppers, we've made the soles, and all of those individual elements will actually have an impact and influence on what we call the fit.
Okay.
Now, the last is one element there, but also you've got the uppers will have an impact. The materials that have been chosen for the making, those will have an impact. So all those different stages that we've been through will affect the fit. So what we prefer to do, and what we have been taught, is to present those together in a completed form to give us a true feel for what the actual fit of the shoes is when they're not only when they put on the feet, but also when you wear them and you walk in them.
And I look at these shoes and I see a finished pair of shoes, that could be delivered and I could walk out with. And although they may be complete, what you're saying is that they're in fact not finished.
We will get to that stage,
okay,
and it may come sooner or it may come later. But our aim here at this point is to check that they fit you properly.
Yeah.
If we need to make any changes from this point, then we will. But what we want to have here is a true sense of what the proper fit will be when the shoes are finally finished.
Yeah. And, Lobb, of course, having 165 years of continuous practicing of this craft, I mean, is this the way that it's always been done here?
Yep, the way I've always been taught, and it's the way my father was always taught. So it's fairly grounded in tradition.
Yeah. Whenever I think of fit, I think of the job of the last maker, carving that last, which is that approximation of the foot. But what I'm hearing and you say is that, in fact, it's the way that multiple things play together that ultimately result in how well a pair of shoes are fitting. Is that correct?
Yeah. Well, we've gone in some depth and some detail into all of the different components that go into the making of a shoe. Each of those elements will have an impact on the fit.
Okay.
If you don't prepare and put the right material into the shoe, you don't sort of get the proportion and get the patterns cut properly or the uppers made properly. If you don't get the sole properly stitched on or welted in, it will have an impact on the shoe.
Okay.
And the fit.
Yeah.
Ultimately, people look at the fit as being the last because obviously that's what you associate it with. But what we want here is to have the proper means of judging what the shoes are like on your feet and when they're worn.
Yeah. And the only way to do that is with a complete pair of shoes.
And this is the best way to do it.
Yeah.
For us, it is bringing the service to its top level.
Yeah. And that's one of the things that I'm struck by here at Lobb is, that royal warrant holder for the better part of the entirety of the firm's history is that commitment not just to the craft but to the service, doing it at the highest level, but also doing it in a respectful manner that's respectful to the customer's time.
Well, you want to make it as a pleasant an experience, as painless an experience as possible.
Yeah.
I'm not saying that it always happens. It can take time and it can be slightly painful, but it is also a human endeavor.
Yeah. Yeah. At its best.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, great. Let's try them on.
Good.
I mean, they look beautiful.
Thank you. Well, they still need a good polish. And obviously, once we've fitted them, if you're happy with them, we'll go on to make the trees and actually prepare the shoes and polish them and get that depth of shine into the polish.
And provided that you're happy with the fit, about how long would that finishing process take?
For the trees, we'll quote within about sort of 3 to 4 weeks.
We had the opportunity to visit the tree making factory, at the beginning of this project, where you're also doing the last making, the rough turns.
Yeah, no, it's there's a lot that goes into it. I mean, I could even expand and say if we don't get the trees done properly, it will have an impact on the fit.
Oh, really?
So once you've made the shoes and you've fitted the shoes, that process of making the trees, fitting the trees into the shoes, again, that has to be done properly.
And what impact can that have? I mean, stretching the shoes?
Well, if it's a little bit too, you can stretch the shoes. Yeah, at the worst case.
Worst case,
Yeah. That's good. There's no. So obviously you want them to close up a little bit of a gap there, so that obviously over time, if the things pull together a little bit, so that I would say is ideal. You want them to have a snug, but not close fitting in the heel, which they have. And obviously, you want to have room for your toes, and you want to avoid any excessive creasing over there.
So how much of this fitting process is your assessment in terms of looking at different elements of the shoe, and then how much of it is perhaps subjective based off of how the customer feels?
Well, there's a subjective element. I mean, going back to when you were first measured, we had a conversation about what sort of toe shape you would like.
Yeah.
You might be telling me I want a classic round shape, which is what you went for.
Yeah.
You might have equally have said I want a squared toe. So you're making an assessment as to whether we've achieved what you wanted.
Okay.
So I am dependent on your assessment, your sort of judgment.
But what about fit too? Because I mean, one of the things you spoke about also in the beginning part of the process is understanding the customer's preference for fit, how close or tight they might like it, or how roomy a customer might prefer. I mean, does Lobb have a strong position in terms of what the right amount of, if you will, excess or room is?
I think we are obviously a shoe that fits. Doesn't cause any discomfort to the customer.
Yeah.
Again, it will go back to your conversation you had from the outset, and you're saying you look at what you've been wearing, you try and get an assessment as to whether they would prefer generally to have something that's a little bit tighter and has a smarter toe shape.
Yeah.
But if you want a well-fitted shoe, you want to make sure it does have enough room for the toes.
Yeah.
And when you stand up, there's a little bit of spread. And when you look down, it's aesthetically pleasing.
Yeah.
Not all feet accommodate those things, but I can say that for the wider feet or the broader feet who really want the fitted shoe, you do have to make a shoe which is broader and wider and doesn't look quite as elegant as.
Yeah, and this is where the customer's feet ultimately have an impact.
And also when you put them on, there is always this. When you look at something in isolation of the customer, it can look quite different from when you actually put it on the feet and you look at it in combination with what they're wearing and what they're doing.
Yeah.
It's surprising how the perspective changes.
Yeah.
And you're also looking at it from 6 feet up, rather than you're not sitting there with it. So everything about the whole perspective of changes.
In judging fit, you're looking for something that's neither too tight and uncomfortable, but also neither too large. But within that range, I mean, is there an allowance for kind of customer preference slightly on the
Yeah, of
tighter
course.
side of things and slightly on the...
There was always allowance. We are providing a service.
Okay.
I am trying to give you the service you want from us. It's just sometimes, obviously sometimes it's all put in our court and you say, okay, you do what you do.
Yeah.
And that's fine, we do that. But we're trying to produce a shoe which doesn't, if it has a lot of excess leather and excess room, you'll get excess creasing.
Yeah.
What you want to do now, I can't see anything to be concerned about, but the next thing obviously is to stand up and walk in the shoes. Yeah. Walk, if you can walk on a harder surface and walk out.
Okay.
Then that will give us a sense of how you feel in the shoes themselves.
Yeah. Great. Yeah, I would say that, hopefully the smile on my face, says it all. I mean, I'm very, very pleased. I mean, I think the toe shape is beautiful. The balance, the aesthetic of the shoe is exactly what I wanted, which was very classic and very classically Lobb. There's a beautiful shape to the toe, really in all dimensions. I mean, it's got dimensionality to it.
Yeah, it's all come together very well, I'd say.
And I'd say that they're comfortable. I mean, within my wardrobe, if you will, of bespoke shoes, I've got some that are really quite close fitting. Certainly can cause discomfort. And then I've had other pairs that do have too much room, where you don't feel like it's hugging you, kind of holding you in. And I'd say that these are really spot on perfect.
Well, thank you.
And for the sake of conversation, this point of the fitting, what type of adjustments might you encounter?
Well, the heel sometimes needs a little bit of clipping, a little bit of adjustment in the heel, but not unusual. I think that the greatest compromise that most shoemakers have is actually wanting to give them a nice looking shoe, making sure they have enough room for their toes.
Okay, yeah.
So probably as a result of that, the most common adjustment one might make is for the little toe on the outside here.
I mean, would you ever encounter a point where the shoes have to be remade?
It does happen, yep.
Okay.
Yeah, as I said, it's not frequently. If you did it for every single pair, then you would probably want to
reassess your last-making skills.
Reassess our skills and reassess the tradition of the last.
Yeah. And do you find that, I mean, you're really putting your money where your mouth is, I suppose, with the fitting being a completed pair of bespoke shoes. And, you're saying that, the only way to truly assess fit, with any level of integrity is to do it, in fact, with complete shoes.
Unfortunately, if you make a shoe without a proper sole on it, and then you put a sole on it, the fitting can change quite considerably.
Yeah. Okay.
I mean, they may be sometimes considered subtle changes, but physically they can be different, especially if you make them by hand.
Yeah.
And if you were to take something like that and then make an individually made pair of manufactured shoes, that would completely transform the whole experience.
The whole experience. Yeah.
Not that you can't do these things, but it's not what we do.
Yeah. Again, with 165 years of, last-making experience, we spoke about this aggregation of knowledge that exists within Lobb. In many ways is, kind of almost a brain trust of that shoemaking experience. Do you find that is maybe one of the things that allows Lobb to get closer to that point of perfection, maybe with less trial and error that some shoemakers inevitably might find themselves in?
The only way in which we can maintain the quality and the service that we have is to make sure that the craftsmen have the necessary skills. Yeah. So over the last 30, 40 years, what's happened is that instead of bringing craftsmen from outside, we've actually trained nearly all the craftsmen who now work for us.
Yeah, amazing.
And that's the only way we maintain the business and the tradition.
So the shoes fit great. I mean, I'd certainly say I'd love to be able to walk out with them right now, but...
well, there's still work to be done.
They're not finished,
no.
Right? But how much of that fitting process also happens in after the delivery? I mean, especially with the first pair of shoes that a customer hasn't had the opportunity to travel in, to wear maybe several days straight. Is there much feedback that you expect after delivery that still can impact or...
I would say, on the whole, I would say if you get to this point, and a customer then takes the shoes away, I don't anticipate any difficulties. You still have to wear the shoes.
Yeah.
And there are things that might crop up in the wearing, but I would say at this point I wouldn't expect or anticipate any difficulties.
Yeah. And this is part of the investment in time of that first pair, right? Is that, there's a time that as a lastmaker and as a shoemaker you're spending ensuring the proper fit, but also from the customer side, there's also an investment of time of one seeing this process through, but then also understanding that, you have to live in the shoes a little bit in order to truly have them settle and to be able to make that determination of whether or not any small tweaking is needed.
Yeah. Well, they're quite, they are unique. Each pair is unique, but they're a different animal to things that you would normally have worn possibly in your life. So you need time to appreciate the difference. Yeah. Professors will wear them for a day, then they might wear another shoes. Mm-hmm. In my experience, what happens is that people will always gravitate towards their most comfortable shoes. Yeah. And over time, more often than not, people will gravitate towards our shoes.
Yeah, absolutely. Great. So what's left, kind of in the finishing process?
We are going to make the trees.
Okay.
We just need to make a little selection of the trees. We will present them with shoe bag. So next time you come in, the shoes will be complete with their trees. They will have been polished, and we will have polished up the toes, if you like, a high shine. Yeah. And we'll put it all together.
And if I'm in London, then have the privilege of accepting that delivery here. Mm-hmm. But I would imagine that for many customers, they're being sent in the post.
Yeah, we send them all around the world.
Yeah. Yeah. Excellent. Well, do I have to take them off, or I get to continue to wear them?
I'm afraid you will have to leave them with us. I always have to say that, but it's unfortunately customers, they then, having waited patiently, they then have to leave the shoes with us.
Just for that final stretch. Final stretch. So more decisions.
More decisions. So here we are, Kirby. We need to make a decision about the shoe trees.
Okay.
A little matter of shoe bags, and those will obviously go with the shoes and complement the work that's been done. Yeah. The trees are important because they keep the shape of they're made to replicate the last. Mm-hmm. Obviously, they're made from a different piece of wood, and they're hinged, so they work within the side of the shoe. So we make them, as you've been to the tree makers, but we make them in the same shape as the last themselves.
Okay.
So those will fit into the shoes and keep the shape of the forepart.
As you would say, fully lasted shoe trees, actually, built off the last of the shoes. It's not a generic size. It's not a standard size. I mean, it's literally to the shoe for the customer. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, it's an art form in its own right. Mm-hmm. Obviously, a little bit more machinery in terms of the turning and the copying lathes, but it is rather an essential part of components of the shoe if you want to preserve them through your lifetime. Yeah, and we had the opportunity to visit the tree maker, and again, this is part of the provenance of Lobb, where Lobb is making these exclusively for themselves.
We're unusual in that we, again, like all these traditions, we've preserved the tree making as part of the company, and it's an important part of the shoes, really. Yeah. I mean, without the trees, they can preserve the shoes, but it does help them longevity of the shoes.
Well, and with an investment like these, I mean, you would certainly want to ensure that you're doing everything possible to, keep the shoes looking their best, and trees are essential for that.
Yeah, no, it's practical. I mean, they serve a very practical purpose. Yeah.
So what are the options whenever it comes to trees? I mean, I see several different models here.
Traditionally, we use a lot of mahogany, but that's now obviously protected. So we've moved on to using what was a similar colour wood, which is sapele. Okay. And the majority of our trees are made from sapele. Okay. We do have a lighter weight wood, which we're currently using a tulip. Has a slightly different tone to it. That's a tulip tree. And then we'll put brassing and engraving in the trees as well.
Okay. So the first choice would be the choice of wood. Right, with the primary difference being just the weight. The sapele is a little bit heavier than the tulip.
Yeah, the tulips are lighter weight. Sometimes for travelling, if people are travelling a lot, they might want something a little bit lighter. Okay. And then we'll take out as much of the wood as possible without losing the integrity of the actual tree. Okay. And so that's what this kind of carving is right here. Is that just for weight, or is it also for circulation? That's normally circulation that circulation, but also is to do with weight. You want the structure of the tree, but you don't want it excessively. We try and take out as much of the sort of excess wood as possible, which makes for a sort of, keeps the structure, but it also allows for the air to circulate.
Yeah.
Well, the shoe, I mean, you want to keep the shape of the original shape of the shoe. See, originally it's moulded onto the last.
Okay.
So the tree maintains the form of the last
Yeah.
throughout the life of the shoe.
Okay.
As you wear the shoe will bend and it will flex. But once you put it back on the tree, it will go back to the form of the original last.
Okay.
Which helps to ease the stress on the shoes and keeps the creasing down.
Okay. I mean, I see a few different options here. Kind of help me understand where we are there.
Well, most trees, we have the classic hinged tree. So if you're Sapedi, we'll have a hinge in the middle, which allows you to put it in the shoe. There are three-piece trees, which we occasionally will make three-piece trees for shoes. And these, like a boot tree, they will have a key in the middle.
Okay.
And a back piece and a forepart. They tend to be a bit heavier, a bit more robust. There is a benefit. I mean, normally with a boot, we would want to put a three-piece in to maintain the structure of the leg, as well as the forepart. You don't need to have it in a shoe, but it does help to maintain, again, not just the forepart structure, but also the structure at the back.
Yeah, and you do that with, say, like a pair of Chelsea boots. I mean, not just long boots, but Chelsea boots, you do three-piece trees?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, with handles or with rings, like that.
Okay. But for a pair of Oxfords like these...
I'll go with the hinge. I think we'll stick with the hinge.
Yeah. I mean, I really like the just the traditional kind of aesthetic of the Sapeli hinge tree.
Yeah, I think we're making things in a traditional form, and this is the most traditional form of tree that we make.
And then bags.
Well, they have a selection of material, and then we choose the material, and then we choose the trimming.
Okay. So these are the swatches for the material?
Yep, and then the trim. You can have different combinations. And then the actual material, again, will be embroidered to match the trimming. We would usually put the John Lobb's original signature on the back.
Yeah, okay. So how about something like this red? And then as far as the piping...
Perhaps blue. Blue is a classic colour.
Yep, the navy blue.
It stands out well on the red.
Yeah, I think that looks nice. And then how are the bags constructed? I mean, are they double-faced or made to be particularly...
They've got a lining inside.
Okay.
So, again, you are protecting the shoe if you're travelling.
Yeah.
We'll get all those things ready and completed. And then I'll look forward to showing you the final shoes.
Yeah, exciting. So the shoes will be sent for trees, the bags will be made, they'll be polished, finished up, and... Yeah,
we'll try and we'll get a nice shine on the toe. So just to highlight those areas. There's sort of harder areas which you will try and highlight with a little bit of sort of wax polish.
Beautiful. Well, Jonathan, very exciting, incredible process. It'll be a very long few weeks waiting, sick with anticipation for these shoes, but it'll be well worth it.
Well, it's been a genuine pleasure taking you through the whole process from beginning to end, and I think as you can see, it's unusual to see and get a really deep appreciation of the work that goes into it right from the beginning to the end.
Yeah, well, the depth of the tradition, the way in which it's practiced, and I think in some ways even more profoundly the reverence for the tradition of doing it properly is something that is evident at every single step of this process. It's very easy to see why, in so many ways, John Lobb shoes are considered the most prestigious that one could possibly ever acquire and wear on their feet. And it's that respect, that reverence for the tradition, for the craft. And then, of course, the 165 plus years of the uninterrupted practicing of that craft that we see here at John Lobb really is
Well, it's nice
profound.
to be in a position to continue that, so I will endeavour to do so.
Yeah. Jonathan, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.